Oh! Oh my god, wait, chat, I know why. Wait, I know why. Do you watch this video?
Looking back through Honkai Star Rail's tenure, though it's
Oh, this could be good. Okay, you know what? Yep. My goat Vars. Alright, W.
the breakneck pace of power scaling has unsurprisingly led to questions over the sustainability of the game's future. Namely in that, what's the point of going after a meta-breaking unit if 3 weeks later there would be another meta-breaking unit? Although I don't think it's that bad.
I truly am the face of Honkai Starbucks if I can say so myself. God
not
damn,
as
bro.
prevalent as they used to be, are still more than serviceable in the modern era. All the same, the fast deterioration and presence for many of the game's older units has prompted Hoyo to release direct buffs to a number of them in an effort to not cause them to fall out the metagame completely. So far, all targets have belonged to version 1, but it begs the question if power creep has also begun to affect a number of version 2 characters.
Well, I don't understand English.
At the time of her release, Sparkle had to have been one of the most hyped characters of all time, with supports being viewed as the most valuable category in HSR's team building environment, and Sparkle carrying a most extraordinary profile of abilities. Players were confident that she would stay relevant in the game for a long time to come. Yet, as early as midway through version 2, she began to lose considerable market share, and in the present day, as we progress through version 3, Sparkle's equity across all 3 game modes currently ranks the lowest among her peers. Not what you would expect for a support many once believed to be invaluable. For today, we'll be discussing the downfall of Sparkle and whether or not she may have been the most overrated character in the game, not to any fault of her own. Version 2, the Honkai Star Rail metagame was beginning to take shape. After version 1 laid the groundwork for endgame combat, the characters that got released around this time were starting to get more intentional. We had Argenti, who was very clearly made for pure fiction, Runmei, who was meant to be a general buff,
Argenti was not made for pure vision. Argenti was made to fucking fail as a fucking failure that he is.
And debuffer, and Black Swan, who was supposed to push forward the dot engine. Up to that point though, there hasn't been a whole lot of developments if at all in the carry department, as throughout most of version 1, Bronya was pretty much a tier 0 character who was being used in every possible team due to a lack of alternatives who did exactly what she could. That all changed when Sparkle came out as the second character of version 2.0, possessing a number of qualities approximating that of the Eurilla Supreme Guardian but with more potential for upside, leading many to believe she might very well be the single best character in the game on account of supplanting the previous best character in the game, broadly speaking. Reception
I mean, she was though. On launch, right? On launch. Because I don't think we even knew what Babin had to offer until like much later, right? And like, unless you had an E6 Bronya, your buff just don't carry forward after your second turn, after your first turn. So like, because of the fact that you get the crit damage buff and all like, okay, and back in those days, right? Back in those days, the main DPSs was basically Blade, Jingliu, as well as Imbibitor Rune, right? Yeah, like back then it was like Blade, Jingliu, and Imbibitor Rune. Alright, I mean, like, I'm talking back then. I think Blade was not even that bad. We have seen a couple of pretty decent 0 cycles on Blade, right? Because Ranmei was 1.6, and then it was Black Swan with Sparkle on 2.0. So you were either playing, I guess, Hyper Carry, DOT, which was a very, very good with Black Swan's release. You were basically playing super Hyper Carry, right? There was no such thing as Super Break back then, right? You're basically either playing Hyper Carry, you're basically playing DOT, or you're playing the follow-up team comp without Babin, by the way. So you only had Doctor Ratio plus Topaz, and then you slept on like a Runway, right? That was those 3 was like the most prevalent team comps, and I feel like for Super Carry, almost every single Super Carry back then, if you were using Sparkle, you definitely had a huge improvement, especially if you would use Invivitor. I'll tell you please. Yeah, especially if you use Dill, because like no one else can give him that much skill point economy, especially if he's using easier. So I feel like on launch, I don't think anyone probably like oversold her on launch, because nobody knew what the fuck was Babin gonna do, bruh. Like if you told me that Babin was gonna come out and have a triple 100% action value advance, I mean, shit, bro. You know what I'm saying? Damn.
towards the mask full was infectious to say the least.
Wait, Babin came out after Acheron and Aventine, right? Or was it before? It was after Acheron and Aventine, right? It's 2.2, right? So it's like Sparkle, and then there was 2.1, then 2.2 was Acheron and Aventine. So like, it was like 3 patches forward, and I don't think anyone knew her kid, man. I genuinely don't think anyone knew her kid. Or maybe I'm just mistaken. I was delusional because I don't look at leaks, right? I don't look at leaks, so I don't know what's going on. So yep.
Related to her in-game, she received by far the highest views on a trailer than any other limited.
I mean, it is a banger ass fucking trailer, though. Okay, chat, tell me I'm wrong. This was a banger ass fucking trailer. Probably still one of my top 3. Really, really. The fact that this thing was like almost 3 times of Blade, it speaks volumes. You know what I'm saying?
Before or since, registering over 20 million views. I still remember the sheer amount of discussion over her being the first instance of blatant power creep, having a constant comparison argument against Bronya over who is truly better. Though the two weren't exactly one-to-one, by and large, players were in agreement that Sparkle would be a direct upgrade in many noteworthy teams at the time, with the reasons being fairly self-evident. Bear in mind, we're still looking at this from the standards of early 2024 when the game was only about 8 months old. Sparkle had a number of things going for her that made her stand head and shoulders above most of the competition, besides maybe Ranmei. Unlike Bronya, whose crit damage boost was to the entire party, Sparkle's boost was only to one person. However, unlike Bronya, whose general damage boost was to only one person...
Nah, I don't even think Sparkle was like worse than Ranmei back then. Is this a hot take? Because like, if you think about it realistically, right? If you run Sparkle in, for example, like Dio and Jingliu, that slot 3, you could have been running either Team Green for energy regeneration or Pella for the Ice Rest down. And then if you were to run Sparkle with Blade, I think Blade could be made a sense, but then you had a whole Sparkle and Bronya team, which we, back in those days, me and Ga just make shit, we had a fucking 175 speed Sparkle, I just jump off. Wholly unrelated ability, right? We had a whole discussion. No, man, I feel like for Hypercare, I think Sparkle definitely was still like super, super good. And then Ranmei, it was the okay, she was best in slot in Racial Topaz. She was best in slot in DOT. And then she was a very, very good glue for sustainless runs. Right? You run a triple sustain. Triple support. You slam on your Ting Yun. You slam on your Ranmei. And then the third one, you can run like Bronya, you can run Sparkle, you can run like Pella, whatever it is. I feel like these 3 are the scenarios where Ranmei was like really, really, really good. Oh, for Scylla as well, right? Sparkle was also really, really good for Scylla. Especially with the spam. Yeah, exactly. Right? QQ! Bro, QQ. Alright, so...
Sparkle's damage boost was to the entire party. I'd say practically speaking that was the better orientation. Seldom did you ever need 2 crit-based DPS characters. Moreover, Sparkle could apply these buffs at higher amounts and for more turns, giving her better uptime and consistency overall. Regarding her turn events, people raised an eyebrow over whether her 50% action forward was subjectively worse than Bronya's full turn advance. But after some testing, it was concluded that 90% of the time, assuming proper speed manipulation, it was close enough to be almost equivalent to a full turn advance in application. We could stand here splitting hairs about the specifics of their buffing capability all day, but for the most part, Sparkle and Bronya weren't that far off.
If that big boom firm or low.
Oh my god, I'm literally going to mute alerts. If someone sends in one more bit, I'm going to mute alerts. And then we're not going to have TTS for the rest of the stream, right? Can I watch my video? Alright, thank you. Alright, thank you. Stop. Unless there's like 50 subs, and then that's a W, right? Stop.
From each other. So why did people see the former as that much better than the latter? And by extension, why did people see her as one of, if not the best character in the game at one point? It's because of the other aspect of her, one that effectively served as the central focus of Honkai style's metagame for a long time.
Style. Okay, wait.
Economy
Can I
was
please
a critical
remove the
factor of
subtitles?
interest.
Okay. Oh my god. Okay, this is the last time I'm pausing, right? I'm gonna remove subtitles. You guys can't understand English, listen a little bit better, right?
Throughout version 1 and even early version 2. Some characters had the potential to contribute extremely well to a party, but would be rendered basically ineffective on the sole basis of SP economy, rather inefficient SP economy. Considered arguably the worst support character in the game, you wouldn't think that at first when you saw what Yukong could provide. 80% attack boost, 28% crit rate, 65% crit damage, 12% imaginary damage, and 10% speed. These were even more impressive than Bronya's buffing profile. Yukong saw zero play for the sheer fact that in addition to her being extremely hard to operate, her SP consumption was by far one of the worst in the game. At least if you wanted her to be more usable, you'd be spending so much to maintain her uptime that you'd have nothing else for the rest of the team. On the inverse end, units like Locha and Jingliu were touted for being very SP efficient, mostly in the sense that they didn't have to necessarily spend skill points every action. It became of utmost importance to prioritize units who took up as little SP as possible. Sparkle's unique property was that she could not only replenish a team's SP supply through her ultimate and technique, letting you make use of more demanding characters like Scylla and Lunai Danheng, but she passively raised her SP cap to 7, which at the time was inconceivable.
Inconceivable. By the way, Scylla is actually not as skill point hungry as you guys think, by the way. Because there are a lot of times, or at least back then, right? You can actually weave in your Scylla basic attacks in between resurgence. And she was like, you could technically make her like skill point neutral for the most part. But like a lot of skill point consumption, it was mostly like you spamming your skills on like your Ting Yun to spam the energy and spam DDD. So Silla was pretty chill. Dill was definitely like
rules
a
of the
fucking
game,
black hole.
something no one else was able to do prior. With SB being the be-all end-all for many parties, people were postulating all kinds of ways to make better use of it, and immediately overnight, Sparkle was given the title of must-pull by many. She could be used for Lunai Danheng, for Sila, for Argenti, for Jinyu and Qingque, Dr. Ratio. The only ones who didn't really go after her
Must-pull.
immediately were Jingliu and Blade, mostly
You're
because they
literally
could use
greedy
other
and still maybe
characters
don't
better,
more, bro.
as well as not really being SP spammers. I'm pretty sure even then though, Sparkle was still the best in slot by like a tiny margin. That wouldn't even be the biggest perk about it. The very next character to be released in 2.1 was Akron, who oversaw the biggest leap in power in the history of HSR. For now. She was easily double the strength of the second best DPS,
Yep.
that's how crazy she was, and while Akron was designed to want other Nihility units in a party, it was actually more worthwhile in many situations to go Sparkle over second Nihility, due to how much power she could give the Emanator. Of course, should you get E2S1 Akron your team of herself, Silver Wolf or Pela depending on the content, Sparkle and Fushuen would curb stomp the shit out of everything the current endgame had to offer without even so much as batting an eye, lending even more.
Okay, so I have one point about this video. Whoa! Whoa! So I guess we just don't need Jiao. Do I need Jiao for Aggron? Do I need Jiao for Aggron? I mean, hey, shit, this point of time, Jiao didn't even come out, right? Yeah, I don't think I need Jiao for Aggron, right? Yeah, shit, yeah. Do I need Jiao for Aggron? I mean, like, this didn't work, right? Then why the fuck do I need Jiao?
Lending even more appeal to Sparkle, who at that point became
Ooh,
determinedly and empirically the best support in the game. Strangely, however, she wouldn't be dominant for very long. One could argue the only reason she was in that position to begin with was because it was one of the first combat engines to get off the ground. Come 2.2, Robin would enter the fray, and alongside
there
Run,
it
the ladies
is.
basically were the HSR equivalent of the
And
Egyptian
there it
god
is,
cards,
a
tokenized characters who basically won you the game by playing them. Yes, I know, Yu-Gi-Oh players don't you well actually me. I know the official cards are all garbage, I'm talking about the anime versions, but I digress. The Harmony Trio would be the centerpiece of version 2's metagame for quite some time, all the way until around 2.7. Each of them drew appeal for offering a slew of all-purpose buffs that could be utilized by just about everyone, while additionally carrying a niche of her own. Robin was specialized in follow-up attacks, although later we discover she's kind of just the best unconditional support.
And
Anyway,
there
Runway was
it
specialized in
is.
break teams, and Sparkle was
And there
specialized
it
in
is.
hypercarries. Each unit of the Harmony Trio also had a tier 0 party at the time. A byproduct of this, of course, is that Sparkle went from being the option to an option. Akron was still far and away the best attacker in the game even with the release of Firefly, but the others weren't too far behind her. By extension, people didn't think of Sparkle as someone that had to be played, rather someone who could. Furthermore, the inclusion of Robin complicated things a bit. Though she was a follow-up attack-oriented specialist, her general buffing was easily the strongest of the three. She offered the exact same buffs as Sparkle did in the form of crit damage and regular damage. Mind you, not as much as a fireworks girl, but enough to compete. Then, however, Robin would also give unconditional bonus attack to the entire party as well, which allowed her to be played in teams that didn't stand to gain much from crit damage like the Dot engine. Chief of all though was the team-wide turn advance on her ultimate, and simply being able to apply buffs to the entire team instead of a portion dedicated only to one character. So in a sense, though Sparkle still had Akron and a few others wrapped around her finger, Robin for all intents and purposes stole a good chunk of market share away from her. And with
I feel like, wait. Actually, I have one interesting point of discussion over here, right? The whole Spark and Bubble thing, right? I think it's quite safe to say, like, right now, in 2025, if you use Bubbin, and you didn't have the Signature Light Cone, or Bronya Signature Light Cone, or the E2, you will run into energy uptime issues, yeah? You will most likely run into energy uptime issues. Eventually, somehow you're gonna miss that by that smidge of like maybe like 10, 20 energy on like energy regeneration roll. You step on Lushaga or Von Weg. Like if you didn't have any of these tools, you're gonna run into issues. But I find it quite interesting how like these issues, they weren't prevalent, or rather at least that prevalent back then, but nothing really changed. You get what I'm saying? Like it's not like we suddenly had like a Huan Huan 2.0 or like a Gallagher 2.0. Like the sustain slot has been the same. It's always been Huan Huan Gallagher. The energy regeneration has been the same. The team comms have more or less been the same, right? The hypercarry team comms don't attack that frequently. Like follow-up is they are the exception, not the rule, right? Like follow-up is actually, they generate a lot more energy bobbing. You definitely had 100% output. But like all these other team comms, you don't really hear as much as compared to right now. Alright? To be fair, now the enemy is much slower. Maybe it has something to do with the enemy design back then. Like maybe they hit you more. I'm actually not too sure why that is the case, TBH. Because I feel like this thing shouldn't have any change at all. all of the version 3 DPS, all of the version 3 supports, 3B and everything, they don't directly impact your Bobbin's energy uptime, if at all, right? And it's not like we're not getting hit that much. Flame River hits you twice every single time. TV hits you quite frequently. Hule hits you like a shit ton. What other enemy examples are there? True Storm also hits you quite a bit, right? You have the bugs as well. Like, a lot of these enemy designs, they also have a potential to give your Bobbin energy uptime. But for some reason, it's like a lot more prevalent that you are facing this Robin issue. Tribi helps Bobbin with energy. I mean, most of the time, you wouldn't really run them both in the same team unless you run Sustainers in the first place. You know what I'm saying? There's no energy issue. Nah, I'm not talking about follow-up, right? Because like back then, when we are using Bobbin outside of follow-up, because she was the best in stock for every single other team anyways. You can run it in DOT, you can run it in Hypercarry, all this kind of stuff. But you don't really hear that much complaints about Bobbin. Or rather Bobbin's ultimate. Right? I think we... Oh my god, wait, chat, I know why! Wait, I know why. Wait, chat, I know why. Wait, no. It's not Quid Pro Quo. It's not Quid Pro Quo. It's not Gallagher, because the sustains are the exact same. We didn't get a brand new Lycone. We didn't get a brand... Okay, I think I know why. I think I know why. 4-star Ting Yun. Yep. I feel like a lot of these showcases with Bobbin, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're most likely turn 1 outing 4-star Ting Yun on Bobbin immediately. You probably don't even use your Ting Yun ultimate on the DPS. You just slammed it into Bobbin. But nowadays, we don't even have an opportunity to slap on that 4-star Ting Yun anymore. And you don't really run your Sunday with Bobbin and then you give the Bobbin. Sometimes you do, right? Sometimes you give Sunday's ultimate to Bobbin herself. But it's 40 energy. Ting Yun is 60. You get what I'm saying? And most of the time, you would want to give Sunday's ultimate to like your other DPS instead of Bobbin. So I feel like it is a contention, right? Since now that 4-star Ting Yun's value, I mean, let's just be real, it's not that good, right? Because the buffs are tied to the DPS turn. So the DPS moves a lot, especially if you run them with a hyper carry, like a Sunday. The buff just goes away just like this, right? So you have like almost no uptime for your Ting Yun buffs. It goes away super fast. And she can't generate enough, or rather this entire team can't generate enough skill points for you. You'll run out of skill points. So eventually people say, okay, why would I even use Ting Yun if she's not even going to be giving me buffs? So I might as well just use another support. You know, you can run Tribi, fuck it, you can run Ramei. Or even if you run Sparkle, I think that's also okay, right? Because at least their buffs can last a little bit longer. And because of like the environment where you don't really run the support of 4-star teaming that much, it indirectly results in a situation where for players that don't really have the signature Lycone and E2 or like the Bronze S1, your Bobby run out of energy. Am I cooking? I just used Ting Yun with a Nexa and 0 cycle. Enemies attack a lot back then, even eventually do a lot of follow-up to it, and it's not, and of course, I don't think the enemies attack frequency changed that much though, like genuinely. Eventually hits you a lot, right? But he also has an attack that sucks your energy, and there's no way for you to dodge it. There's no way, unless you instantly break them, which is not possible unless you play Boot Hill, right? We had True Storm back in the days. We had Kafka back in the days. A lot of the bosses are sort of we had Yanqing, and Yanqing sound like swords, and we have not seen Yanqing for a very long time. But those swords also hit you like quite frequently. I feel like I feel like mainly it's because of the 4-star team. Okay, but anyways, let's move on. Right, let's move on. Just a little bit of a off tangent.
Bobbin, for all intents and purposes, stole a good chunk of market share away from her. And with the emerging follow-up attack and break engines receiving all the attention throughout spring and summer of last year, though she was still a deserving member of the Trinity, Sparkle was considered to be the weakest of the 3 outside of Akron teams. Also, as a footnote, Jingyuan and Lunai Danhang both began to fall off and were no longer being widely used around this time. Another growing concern was that Sparkle's niche was starting to become more of just that, a niche. The majority of meta teams had little interest in the type of buffs that she offered, once again besides Akron. Follow-up attackers could utilize her party-wide damage buff, but we just established that Robin is statistically the better choice for those teams. Dot engines made no use of crit whatsoever, making specialized utility like run maze more appealing. Break engines made use of neither crit damage nor general damage on account of break damage being its own specific thing. So by all accounts, after Akron came out, none of the attackers during this time labeled Sparkle a must-have for them. She could be used, but it wouldn't be optimal. Boonhill preferred Bronya over Sparkle thanks to Bronya's actual full turn events and Boonhill's disregard for all of Sparkle's other buffs. Firefly would much rather have run Mace break efficiency, res penetration, speed, and break extensions.
Oh my god, it's all Super Break's fault. Yep, that's the issue, guys. Firefly killed Sparkle. People stopped using Sparkle because everybody started shooting for Super Break. All right, I said nobody in their right mind will use Sparkle in Super Break. All right, if you want actions, you run for Bronya because they don't care about Sparkle's buff. Right, Rame is always gonna be there. HMC is a free unit. Right, Gallagher's is, oh my god, Super Break killed Sparkle, bro.
To apply as many counts of Super Break as she could. Jade,
Yo, Charis,
despite
thank you
being
so
a
much.
quantum secondary attacker, was not at all compatible with Sparkle, as the Stoneheart was a pure fiction-focused unit, not a hypercarry facilitator. Not back then anyway. Yunli's high personal damage would lead you to believe she could use Sparkle to the fullest, but being a counterattacker, she didn't really care about taking extra turns. She would much rather prefer if the enemies took extra turns. For that matter, counterattacks are follow-up attacks, therefore Yunli wants Robin.
I mean, Sparkle with
Fischl
Yunli
was
is
of
not
course
that bad,
the
though.
poster child of the follow-up attack engine, and Rappa is all about break damage. Something else that took place around this time was the growing rate of SP efficiency in parties, not just in terms of DPS, but supports and sustains too. Aventurine and Gallagher were both economical additions to the sustain roster, meanwhile damage dealers like Jade and Rappa were also fairly low maintenance. Harmony Trailblazer would prefer to use their skill every turn for the purposes of DPS and energy, but ultimately they don't have to in order to function. Not a single unit following Akron would fit Sparkle's niche of necessitating crit damage, turn advancement, and higher speed capacity. Technically,
Do
she
I need
kinda didn't
Jiaoqiu?
need another one insofar as Akron was still standing tall throughout version 2.
Do I need
But
Jiaoqiu
as you
for
get more
this?
options, you have less reasons obligating you to use them, and characters have been starting to catch up to Akron in performance. Now everyone was starting to deal damage in the millions, not just her. Ergo, Sparkle's equity,
Millions.
which at that point was inextricably linked to Akron's, gradually diminished over time. Sparkle was still the best at what she did, but what she did wasn't in high demand like it used to be.
Oh my, you know we are having this exact same. Okay, that's what a great pause screen. What's happening right now? You could literally slap on Babin's face over here, and I feel like that's a very similar situation is gonna be happening in like a couple more patches. It's not like Sparkle her kit changed. It's more like the DPSs that revolved around Sparkle they can't keep up, alright. And we have seen similar situations happening with like your Mighty and Castris. To be fair, Babin doesn't feel it that much yet because you can still run Babin with Dierda, right? You can still run Babin with Aglea. You can still technically, you don't really run Babin with Mighty. Nah, you don't run Babin with Mighty, right? You still run her with like 2 of the version 3 DPS, that's Dierda and Aglea, right? But going forward, a little bit more and more and more, if they don't care about the Robin buffs, it's not that Babin herself as a unit has changed fundamentally, or like they even like released a stronger support. It's more like the DPS themselves, they start to outscale. And if the DPS start to outscale in that specific balance install support, and that specific balance install support is not going to be Babin, right? It's going to be like, for example, Tribi, or any other support that's going to be coming out, right? 5-star Mimi. Then, yeah, I feel like a very, very similar situation is going to happen again. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of like the little Ranmei fallacy video that I made back in the past, which is like if you're just gonna be a general support, right? If you're gonna be universal, if you're gonna be good for like decent for all the different teams, you're never gonna last that long in the shelf life, anyways. And that is sort of what I'm getting at, because the DPSs they don't really care for a general support, right? You don't really care if that specific support is like Jiao Qiu, right? Do we care that Jiao Qiu is like not a general support for like all of the other teams? Probably not. And because if you're Aircron main and you still didn't pull for Jiao Qiu, you know, like it is what it is, right? So like similar situation is probably gonna happen. And I'm guessing the next big step is most likely gonna be with what's the guy's name again? Finon, right? Finon, right? Probably after 5-star RMC, or maybe even the Fate collab. And then by the time those units roll around, it's probably halfway, if not 75% into version 4. So if that is gonna be happening, I wouldn't be too surprised if Babin has a similar fate. Similar fate as Sparkle by the time those rolls around. Right, so that's pretty much it.
Sadly for her, the first half of that statement would soon also no longer apply. Sunday's inclusion of version 2.7 was to Sparkle what Sparkle was to Bronya, another support character who was in the same vein as her yet had the ability to perform significantly better, especially in relation to whatever was in demand. He could supply a full turn advance to a target just like Bronya and even refund the skill point if it was on whoever he ulted. Speaking of which, he could give tons of crit damage to said target and more importantly bonus crit rate, which Bronya and Sparkle could not offer. He could also cleanse whomever he skilled on, the other advantage Bronya had over Sparkle. And while you can only enjoy for 2 turns, he could give the same general DPS boost the others could give to his ally via his technique. Now, Sunday was of course entirely single target, whereas Sparkle had AoE buffing. However, being split down the middle was actively hurting her in that regard. If you wanted AoE buffing, Robin was just better since everything about her was AoE. If you wanted single target buffing, Sunday was better since everything about him was single target. Sparkle was officially beat on both ends. Hypercarries very much enjoyed the Dispel full turn events, higher crit damage concentration, free crit rate, and battery components that Sunday offered. All the while, multi-damaging parties like the Break and Follow engines wanted party-wide supportive utility from units like Robin and Runmei. Sparkle could no longer hold on to Akron as a lifeline anymore either. Higher investment teams began to make use of Sunday, despite Akron not making use of energy whatsoever. And though Akron still remains an excellent character to this day, Amphoris brought in multiple top-tier hypercarries like Manaherda, Aglaya, Mide, Casterus, and many more are coming in the future, putting a ton of pressure on Akron, with many believing she's on borrowed time, and that her days are numbered. Sparkle's best carry, losing ground in the metagame, wouldn't even be the least of her problems though. They would be yet another support released in version 3, who all but pushed her out of tier 0 entirely. Enter Tribby, a hybrid between damage and support, as well as being a harmony character too. While they didn't exactly give the same kind of buff as other harmony supports, that actually worked in their favor. In the case of Akron, she already gets a ton of bonus damage to begin with, courtesy of her passive traces, meaning Sparkle's damage amps aren't as big as they may appear. Tribby, on the other hand, provides buffs that Akron doesn't have, like enemy vulnerability, multi-burst time, or with her first Idolin bonus true damage based on her total. An argument can be made that these buffs are statistically better on Akron than that of crit damage or general damage, not to mention Tribby just having a higher buffing ceiling than Sparkle and possessing the advantage of buffing the entire party, not just one person.
Yo, chat, look at this, guys. Wait, this Akron team, okay, unrelated, right? Okay, ignore Sparkle's feat for a while. Bro, this team still managed to get us phase 2 of Flame Reaver within 0 cycle. Alright, with a sustain as well, by the way. So I think that's a pretty good clear. Right, it was like a pretty good clear.
No, Sparkle did indeed get power crept and in some ways, situation crept. From a circumstantial perspective, Honkai Star will spend most of version 2 ignoring the hypercarry engine after Akron, choosing instead to go into niches that Sparkle did not excel at. Secondarily, SP consumption became less and less onerous of a problem. Then, when they finally started to bring hypercarries back into the metagame, new supports came alongside them, measurably outperforming Sparkle like Sunday and RMC to an extent.
I thought it would be kind of crazy. Wait, it would legit be kind of crazy if his point number 2 gets resurfaced. Alright? Skill points started to become less of an issue as more units are released. I think he's talking about Mide and Casterus, right? They don't really use them. And Galea as well. The 3 of them don't really use that much skill points. But the thing is, right? Sparkle herself just doesn't generate that much anyways. You get what I'm saying? She is +1 skill point every 3 turns. You use your skill 3 times, your ultimate gives you back 4. So it's literally +1 skill point every 3 turns. Minus the additional skill point gain and start of combat with the technique. She really is not even that crazy of like a skill point generator. And we already see that Sunday with S1 literally out skill point Sparkle. Like that was like the whole niche of Sparkle, by the way, to give you that she's like the skill point girl, right? And then Sunday with S1 is like she I think he gave 1.33 skill point per turn. And then compared to Sparkle's 1, right? So if in the future in the event that they do make it such that skill point becomes a little bit more tight, I don't even think this can fix Sparkle, man. I don't think anything can fix Sparkle as of now. Except for Dawei himself. I feel like Sparkle genuinely is above at this point. Cause like you have like she's on like a 2-front war. One is the war against like the other supports, right? Her other peers, her colleagues, the Harmony colleagues, Sunday, Babin, Tribi, literally doing everything that, you know, she wished she could have done. And then on the other side of the war, her DPSs that used to be good back then is no longer even that good. And to a certain extent, even those DPSs don't want her anymore. You want to run Imbibitor with Sparkle, you can just run Sunday. He gives Imbibitor more skill points and energy on top of that. And the buffs can still last. Technically a little bit longer as well. Because Sparkle's buff only extended for like the start of the unit's next turn. So if you were to be like an E2 deal user, the buff is gone the moment you cast your ultimate for Sparkle, right? Whereas Sunday actually maintains that buff. And then if you want to use Jingliu, same thing. Just use Sunday. The fact that Sunday gives you energy, action value advance, and skill points at E0 S1, it really just puts Sparkle completely in a position where, you know, every time when I think I want to use Sparkle, I'm probably going to run Sunday. So she at this point, she just needs to buff very
next step. Whereas yet, non-hyper carries are doing a better job buffing than Sparkle. So in general, supports do a better job in a niche than an actual support character dedicated to that niche. That's when you know she got screwed over. This begs the question though, was Sparkle just another victim of circumstance like most other units?
Wait, he went from a 0 cycle on the first wave, or rather the first... Okay, I'm just randomly yapping on the beat, right? Oh my god, he went from like 100 to 0, 29 left, and he almost got into a, what is this, a 4 cycle clear. This is still 3, right? This is still 3 cycle. Almost got into it, unless Jiao Qiu doesn't kill. But I think Sparkle with DDD probably can push up our aircraft. Wait, let me take a
Or
peek.
was she never
Does
as
it kill
good
here?
as we thought she
Oh,
was?
it doesn't kill?
That it was a time
Wait, it
for
doesn't
and
kill?
the units we had available that gave
Does
the
it kill?
impression of her being this all-powerful support that could do no wrong.
Please
I'd
kill?
say it's a bit of both. She was definitely
Oh, you
overhyped,
can't
no
kill?
mistake about that. But in a similar fashion too.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm just so curious if he kills a Flame Reaver. Okay, Sparkle activates
The
DDD.
dot engine,
Oh, look at that! Look at that! Sparkle activates DDD, pulls back
the
up herself
attention
in
to
the
everything
action
in the
value.
game
Can
except
she
those
bring
who
up
worked in the
Acheron?
niche. Kind of crazy to think.
Wait, she doesn't even need to bring up Acheron. She just needs to bring up Jiao Qiu. Jiao Qiu slaps on the scale. Acheron gets ultimate and he clears. Yep. Oh my god, that's crazy.
She was once a contender
crazy.
for
She
the
even
best
brings it
character
back
in the
anyways.
team, and
Yep,
now she's
that's
barely
crazy.
struggling to be an A-tier
Did he just
character.
basic and didn't kill?
Sparkle's by no means bad, but
Okay, yeah,
considering
anyways,
where
back to the
she
video.
started, it's been a pretty steep decline. What do you
It's
guys
just
think
kinda
about
crazy that
Sparkle?
one
Do you agree with
was
my points, or do you
was
think I
so-
sold her too short? Let me know in the comments down below.
Gee.
For now though, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at
Damn.
+VARM, join my Discord server, and
Damn.
check out my other What Happened to episodes if you haven't
WW
yet.
video.
Until next
W
time, thanks
video.
so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yippee! He's so happy. Alright, so TLDR Sparkle needs a buff. That's gonna be, we're gonna slam that. Sparkle desperately needs a buff. Right? Okay, Sparkle needs a buff. Right, Sparkle needs a buff. So, yep. W vars. Oh my god, how am I not subscribed? Bro, I'm definitely subscribed. I don't know why, but right. W buff. Okay. Join Twitch, join YouTube, all that kind of stuff. See you guys later. Right, boom, done.